Pat Bradford. Tim Merrick.
Here.
Kim Clark.
Here.
Jana Lennon. Hannah Moon. Philip Sutton. Charlene Thompson. Jared Worthington.
Here.
Stephanie Walker. Rob Zappel. Eric Cradle.
Here.
Amanda Kusiak.
Here.
Lisa Wurzbacher.
Here.
Natalie English.
Here. All right.
John Hennett. Christopher Riley.
Yep. Yes, some people sneaking in late. Okay, so we're going to move on, and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Barnes is going to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And do you want to say anything? Jared Worthington is going to lead us in the invocation.
God, we thank you for the opportunity to come together today. We have gifts of talent and time and service, and we are using them all today to benefit those who are going to be the most influential in our future. God, so we pray that this time is an opportunity for us to reflect on the great things we've done in the past and looking forward to great opportunities we get to provide to every single one of the students who walk through our doors. And we pray for them, we pray for their well-being and our staff as they continue to do things that are necessary that they've been called to do, which is enriching the lives of our kids. We ask this in your name. Amen.
All right, we need to approve the agenda. Someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor that vote, say aye.
Aye.
All not in favor, say no. That passes. Not sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so. And the minutes, the same thing. Did anybody look at the minutes that has a question on them? I felt good about them. I move approval. Okay, thank you. And so Natalie English on the yes, and Dr. Merrick on the second. So all in favor say aye. Aye. And all opposed say no. That passes. Still, I'm not sure on the count just yet. It's increasing by the moment. And we are going to move right into allotment formulas. And I know you all got it this morning. You said, I need to know more about allotment formulas. But it's really fascinating. He's going to talk real slow. And you're doing it, are you not?
Yes,
Yes.
that's fine. Ashley, is that good with you?
Yes, that's fine. Before we get started, can I share just a couple of things that came up
Yeah,
in the
you
last meeting?
Please.
Okay. So in the last meeting, and if you refer back to the minutes, just to refresh our memory, there was a question about acronyms, and we wanted to make sure we provided that. Thank you, Ms. Clark, for helping us with those acronyms.
You're welcome.
And then, of course, if something comes up that we want to add to this list, we'll certainly be glad to do that. So we'll keep a list going to help us out as we have these meetings. And then the other thing that came up in our previous meeting, you should have, and I'm not sure where it is in your packet, but you have a little chart with position information on it. It's got 2 pie graphs. The question came up when we were looking at forward-facing and non-forward-facing positions, how many of those were teacher and teacher assistants? So as you can see here, 54.5% are teachers and 12.1 makes up the teacher assistant number. So there you can see the breakdown of the forward-facing position. So I wanted to make sure I followed up on those questions from the last meeting before we started. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay, we're sort of be working off of 2 documents, so if you want to look in your rather extensive packet of materials, you'll see one that says state allotments. It's, I guess this is letter, not landscape. And you will see another one that says New Hanover County Schools allotment formula. So we're going to sort of be switching back and forth between these two, and I think it's hopefully a chance for you guys to get a little bit of a sense of some of the challenges that we're working through together. All right, so looking at the state one first, your state dollar allotments. The state gives us our positions and there's a picture of it there if you want to see it. The state gives us in 3 different ways. So they do what's called state dollar allotments, which means sometimes they just say, here's a pot of money to do this with. And those are things like teacher assistants, instructional material, non-instructional support material, those kind of groupings. So if you look behind that, the second page is called position allotments. And those are positions they give us as a position. And this teachers is probably the most obvious one. The state will say you have 1,100 teachers. Your job is to figure out where they go. Now, obviously for us, our local dollars and our federal dollars come in dollar amounts. The state comes a lot of its stuff in position allotments. So to the state, a teacher is a teacher is a teacher. What Ashley and her department will do is ensure the highest paid teachers we have end up on the state ticket because they'll cover a position regardless of the cost. We cover more of our beginning teachers, things like that through our federal and our local dollars because the dollars go further, if that makes sense. All right, and then the third one is something called categorical allotments. And those are some things we'll go through together. So I just want to highlight a few things that are in this state allotment formula I think are going to be things you want to be able to process, because what we're also going to do is go through some of our information that we're bringing forward to the board. Is that what we're doing as well?
Correct.
All right. So I want to make sure that you guys know some of the nuance to this. If you look on the first page of state dollar allotments, teacher assistants is on a second group down. Don't worry, if that formula makes no sense, you need a master's degree in teacher assistant allotment to get it. I think the most relevant piece that you want to look at is over to the right where it says the factor used in allocation is $46,272. That is what the state says the salary and benefits for a teacher assistant is. It's important to know that our average teacher assistant salary is $1 an hour more than the state's average. So when the state thinks they're sending us, it's about 160, 170. They think they're sending us the equivalent of $170 teacher assistants dollar amount. It only covers about 145 for us because we pay our teacher assistants more. So I want you to realize that that doesn't come out as a one-for-one dollar amount, if that makes sense. And if you go down, you'll see the amount of money they give for other items. On the second page is the position allotments, and I want to highlight just a couple of them because we've talked about them before. As you can see down there, the teacher allotments, for all the different grade levels. But I want to make sure you see one thing in particular. Grades 10 through 12, and this is something that Hannah had spoke about earlier. They'll give us one teacher for every 29 students in a building. The only way you have all of your classes at a high school under 30 is if every single class, every single period, every single school is the same size. Obviously, you know that that's impossible. Also, so every time you have a class of AP statistics with 14 kids in it, you end up with a class with 35 in it because that balance has to happen, okay? So just be aware that that's a specific trigger. All of our CTE classes, which are a lot of hands-on activities, 20 kids in an opening class, no more than 16 in a second level class, because you don't want 30 kids juggling chainsaws in a construction department, in a construction class, right? So you want to keep those numbers small. You don't have more than 16 or 18 in a second level class that's doing culinary arts, okay? So those are some of the things you have to realize that those impact on the numbers a little bit. The two I want to make sure I share with you specifically halfway down on the second page is instructional support. Now I'm sorry, but I will bang this drum forever. or at least till June 30 of 2028. The instructional support is a bucket that has media coordinator, counselor, social worker, instructional coach in it. One more time.
Yes, please.
Media coordinator, social worker, counselor, instructional coach. That's what the state considers instructional support. Now, if somebody has their phone handy, we're just going to use 25,000 students to make it simpler. If someone would take 25,000 students and divide that by 417 and tell me the number.
59.95.
You call that 60 where I'm from, okay? The state gives us 60 positions for all of our schools for all of those things. Not 60 of each, just 60. We have 76 counselors alone. We have 30 social workers and we're supposed to only have 25. We have 35 media coordinators, and that doesn't even touch the instructional coaches. So when you see and when we talk about the impact that we have to go to our local dollars for, this is why. This alone is why. So I said, blah, let's go ahead and say, what if you gave us one of each for 417 instead of just one? I thought that won't be that much money. For just us, it increases our budget by $14 million a year. If I had a social worker, a media coordinator, and a counselor in every school, it would cost $14 million more than what they're giving us right now. I think that's a significant number to be aware of. It would cost $14 million, sorry. Not $14 million more, because obviously that would be a lot. But we also know that a school like Laney, we'll go to Laney, and we'll use Ashley. One counselor is enough for you guys, right? Right? That's, okay. So I've showed you sort of the pressure point with that. If you go a couple steps down, assistant principals, you'll see again. Jared, since you're my calculator genius here, grab 25,000 again and divide that by 98.53, and then divide that by 10.5. You should get 20, 24, 23. Divided by 98.53, and then divide that by 10.5.
24.16.
Okay. Where I come from, we call that 24. That's the number of assistant principals the district gets, 24. And that's a state-required position.
And how many schools do we have?
45.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to take a stab at how many APs we actually have? Good man. You nailed it. You're not, don't even work with me and you got that. 57, which means we're coming to our county commissioners for more money. They pay more of our assistant principals than the state does. So those are a couple of pressure points that I want to make sure that when we go to the other sheet are going to come out and make sense. All right. You slip to the third page with categorical allotments. I'm just going to draw your attention to the bottom, which is academically, intellectually gifted.
This is a good one.
They will give us $1,492. Yep, Jared, go ahead and pick up your phone. For every 4% of our ADN. So we're going to use 25,000 again. Jared, multiply that by 4%. Okay, multiply that by 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
That is $1,492,590.
Now, the average teacher salary plus benefits is 80 grand-ish, okay, just 80.
So divide by 80?
Yep,
Grand.
and you're going to get about 18.53,
18.657.
okay? They will fund 18 academically and intellectually gifted teachers. Pat, how many schools do we have again?
45.
Yeah. We don't get the value of what some of these things are. Now, we've been talking to our legislators, we know the concerns, these are obvious concerns. But why I want you to have those things in your mind a little bit is when we go to our next sheet, okay? Now we're gonna go to our landscape sheet, okay?
How many academically gifted teachers do we actually have?
So you should have 2 landscape sheets, so you want to look at the one that's 2024-25 allotment formulas. There's a second one that says proposals, but we're going to hold off on that one.
Okay. So they look exactly the same except for that 25, 26 thing, okay?
In the proposal.
And we'll start right out of the gate. So if you want to have some funsies, go to your second page on this one and your first page on this one. And we'll look at assistant principals comparatively speaking. And you're going to see what John was just mentioning a minute ago. We provide 2 APs for every one of our middle schools. We give 4 APs to every one of our traditional high schools. And I think both Charlene and Hannah would say, that's barely cutting it out. And that's barely making it do. Now, when you add up that formula, because we have to have some way to take the state's money and parse it out. We have to have some fair way of making sure that happens. So this is the formula we use for APs, for classroom teachers, and you can see it all the way down the mix. Now, I will tell you something that we all believe very strongly, that it matters more about the quality, skills, and efficacy of the teacher than it relies on the number of students in the room. Hannah, would you think that's a true statement? Yeah, 100%. Okay. So in other words, I'd rather have 33 in Hannah's room learning English than 3 teachers of 15 apiece, where I can't be as sure of the quality or expertise that they're bringing to the table, okay? So class size is not the only factor to consider when you're looking at how kids learn. However, there is a number, right? Having 45 in a room is a problem, right? And I know you don't have 45. Please tell me you don't have 45. All right, thank goodness. I asked a kid the other day, he's like, I got 47 in my chemistry class. I was like, no, God. But you can see here, some of the things that we've had to wrestle with is specifically special ed. Now, if you look at the teacher assistant formula, we give 2 TAs for every 3 kindergarten classes and 1 for every 2 first and second grade classes. The reason we don't have third grade in there anymore is I took all 17 of those TAs that we would have earned and gave them to special ed because they could not find enough special ed teachers, TAs, with the money we were providing. So we are finding now that we're having to sort of cut in some places to get there in others. And there's just still not enough. So you can look through this all the way through if you like. It just basically gives us our roadmap for how schools get positions. Another thing you're going to see, let's go on the second page, 2 down, or 3 down, you're going to see gifted education teachers. That's AIG. Every traditional elementary school has one. All of our middle schools have one. And our high schools share one. I will tell you just out of the gate, that doesn't make 18, makes 30-ish. Okay? Counselors, again, 60 total for all those buckets I told you about earlier. We've got 67 counselors, just alone. So these are some of the daily struggles that we have. Do we think that every school needs a guidance counselor? Yes. But if you go back up to the top of that sheet, do I think that every elementary school should have their own art, music, and PE? Yep. But the state only gives you 1 of those positions for every 191 kids that you have. So none of our elementary schools, except our 5 largest, earn all of their positions for enrichment by themselves. And if we go back to the AP, none of our middle schools gain 1 all by themselves either. So this is where that struggle between how do we work with our county commissioners to share our needs in a way that the county commissioners don't go, this is some of the stuff the state should be doing. And there's that balance that we have to figure out, where do we find. And we try to advocate with our General Assembly, with our legislators, about the needs for schools as well. So I think, Ashley, that covers it a little bit. But I will ask questions in a second. This is the formula the state used. This is, we know what kids need. And we have to do what kids need. See? Now my mic drop moment. Now I'll open it up for questions.
Before we go to questions, can I add some information?
Please.
So the third document you have.
Good, thank you.
Yes. The third document you have is the 25-26 allotment formula proposals. And so please keep in mind that we're still in our own budget work sessions with our board, so this isn't necessarily final. However, the only changes that we're making to the allotment formulas compared to last year is if you go to the third page, middle of the page is where we start listing the formulas for non-personnel type things, so instructional supplies and custodial supplies, those type things. The change that we're making, if you compare to the current year and this document, in the current year, we're actually funding $65 per student for instructional supplies, and we are going to change that to $60 per student. And for pre-K instructional supplies, in the current year, we're funding $130 per student, and we're going to reduce that to $120 per student. So those are the only changes that we currently have proposed for these formulas.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, so, two questions actually. One is how that represents some savings. Can you tell us how much? And then, secondly, are there any expectations that there might be an increase somewhere else in an ask of the county commission?
We're still calculating that in one regard, but I will tell you that that is just to we're trying to find a way that no school has to lose a staff member in any other way. And things have become so expensive that this is the only way we can balance.
If I recall correctly, and I do apologize, I don't have that book with me today, it was around $130,000, I believe. And that funding is going to help. We had a request come in related to athletic equipment. We've had the increases for officials and for the booking agents related to athletics have gone up so much that our schools haven't been able to replace athletic equipment, and we're concerned that it could be a safety issue for us. And so we're going to use this money to help the schools purchase the athletic equipment we feel like they need. Because the other option was if we felt like if we didn't replace that equipment, that we might really need to look at the offerings for the athletics, and we certainly didn't want to have to do that.
I want to also share with you, this is what life is like when we don't access our fund balance.
When you don't what?
Access our fund balance. This is some of the challenges that we live with, because I can't find $120,000 to help with the athletic equipment any other way. A couple of other points.
Can I address that just real quick?
Yeah, please.
Natalie, I had suggested, didn't go over really well, but because I have 3 people from the business community here, I had suggested that we could find community partners that could help us pick up that slack. Not in terms of crowdfunding, but there've got to be some businesses in the chamber and so are that are wanting to do more, but they just don't know what to do. And that would be in an area where they could help. And it sounds funny to have a school supply drive, but you know, that's what we're talking about. $5 on supplies per student and $10 on.
I think many communities, not necessarily the chamber and all of those communities, but encourage businesses to support things like school supplies. And sometimes it's a drive, sometimes it's money, and sometimes it's both. I think there's some missing infrastructure at the school system for that. I think businesses are going to be really uncomfortable writing a check to the school system. If there was a school foundation, they might be more willing to consider writing a check. So there's some semantics that would need to be worked out. I don't think it's without question. So.
And again, last year, what we were able to do, because we were careful, because we cut out different things, and because we looked at saving money, we were able to push some money back out to schools in October. Right now, my goal isn't to increase our fund balance exponentially. It's to put things where they're needed. So when we get to next year, and we've done all of our reconciling of our books, and we're managing our money carefully, found money will get spent back out to schools. and I'll talk with principals, and if that's what they say they need the most, then we'll effort that as we can. But right now, I've got to bring the board a balanced budget.
And a quick fix for that would be, if we think we're going to put that money towards the athletic equipment improvements, you know, like broken football helmets, things we just can't do without, then maybe we could find somebody out in the community that wanted to support that athletic equipment endeavor, and then the money could come back into the supplies. You know, it's just a matter of moving it across the balance sheet, whichever is more palatable to somebody out in the community.
Now, don't want to speak for my board yet, but I think we would consider the school supplies before we would consider the athletics. So I think that's got to be a different kind of an ask.
Where's, so I know that my son was played soccer at Hanover. That was one thing that the boosters, certain schools have
Not all
better
schools have
resources
them.
than others.
Yeah, not all
You just
schools
said at
have
certain
them.
schools, yeah.
At the high school level, it's apparent because of the alumni. How does that fit into the mix? Do those PTOs or those booster clubs, they have sole discretion on how they invest their money, or is it kind of
Booster
shift?
clubs stay completely separate from school accounts for all sorts of reasons. But the cost of, it's a lot of hot dogs to get a football helmet. The football, but we're also talking about increases in the cost of coaches, increase in the cost of officials, increases in the cost of all the materials and all the equipment, plus all the cost of the officials and things like that go up every year. And we were trying to not increase the cost of the tickets either.
To get pushback on that. Just for example, yesterday, Vice Chair Barnhart said that in her PTO, she's one of three. One of three. And I was like, well, certainly yours has got to, be full. She's like, no, it's just there's three of us. So it's a problem.
Well, my kids are Gregory. It was well, the fun events were well attended, but
Yeah,
there's a dozen of us.
we did that deliberately. Okay, I didn't mean to belabor it, but I just wanted to put that idea out there. You never know who you're going to talk to tomorrow. It might get help.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I have a question for Mr. Bond.
go ahead.
Are we at that point? I just didn't
Yes,
want
sir.
to jump here,
You
so.
are.
Let's go upstream. You're cutting the instructional of the $60, $65 per student down to $60. How much does it actually cost? Are teachers paying out of their own pocket as a result of this?
They already are, so yes, right?
Teachers-
Well, I'd like
This-
to hear from them, Natalie, because I know that's a perception. I'd like to hear the reality of what this means to the teachers and to the classrooms.
We
And-
try, okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
I'm just saying, and if they are paying out of their pocket or refusing to pay out of their pocket, what is it that the children are not receiving when you say instructional materials?
Now, instruction, and Kim, if you want to jump in, you certainly can, or Jana, or Phil. The instructional supply money is not a pass-through that 100% of that turns into money in a teacher's account for their own classroom. You also have to account for school-wide materials as well, including things like paper in the copier and all those kinds of things as well. We try to provide the teachers with every resource that we can, workbooks, things like that, but teachers, there's a difference between, is this a job or is this a craft, right? And teachers want their kids to learn. And teachers have passions and things that they want to add into their classroom environment and make those things more accessible and better for kids. It's an individual teacher thing. I could never say, you're spending too much money and you're not spending enough. But is it real that teachers have to buy stuff out of their own pocket? Yes. But it's also real that I can't get enough staff in a building either. And principals, jump in, please.
You know, each year, we designate an amount of money that each individual teacher will be able to spend on instructional supplies. This past year, it was $100. It has been a little bit more in the past. But we try to keep it around that, between 100 and 150, something like that. That's what they'll spend for the things that they need to run their classroom for a whole year. I can tell you, that's not going to get it in a classroom. All the supplies for a lab and a science class, those kinds of things. They're still going to need some of that, and we're going to provide more, based on departments and what they need. But that $100 is to help, in many cases, keep kids with paper, keep kids with notebooks, some of those things that, scissors, construction paper, those types of things that they're going to need manipulatives for in class. Some of those bigger items like lab materials, we'll sit down with departments and novels and things like that and take a look at that. But the $100 is just not going to do it. And so when they need it, they come to us and they ask for more. But in many cases, they're going to spend out of pocket to make sure that those students get what they need.
I would just also add, it's also maintaining and fixing things that are also broken. So whiteboards. We use whiteboards all the time in the classrooms. Our math teachers love whiteboards. They break almost every year. We've got to replace whiteboards. A whiteboard costs you $150. So it's also making sure that our media center is current. If we're trying to teach non-fictional text and informational text to children, they don't want to read, they want the current information, the informational text that's current. So our MTAC teams, media technology committees, are tasked with looking at making sure that the books that our kids have access to are also current. So part of that too is making sure that we're supplying kids with books in the media center. Also, I know arts is on there too, but a lot of times in order to get all of the materials for our arts departments and sometimes our CTE departments, it's tapping into that instructional fund balance to get all of the materials for our kids in the classroom.
Thank you. Dr. Merritt?
I'm grateful to have so many educators in the room because I ask these questions all the time, and we see in the media that statewide they're saying that the average educator spends about $1,000 of their own money every year. Now, is that hyperbole? I'm asking you guys, what do you know?
No, I spend a ton of money. My husband does too. So in terms of what they're saying about supplies, yes, I've got supplies. I got $150 in August. I spent it on construction paper, things that I knew that I would need, notebooks for my kids. But my kids took a check-in the other day. I knew that some of them were going to eat breakfast. So I went out and bought muffins and some drinks and things like that because I knew my kids needed that. I provide breakfast for my AP students before as well because they get there real early. We have an early morning cram session. But those are things I want to do, right? I want to have pink pom-poms hanging from my classroom ceiling, so I buy those. Are there certain things we don't have? Yes. No Red Ink is a grammar program that we like. It costs $10,000. And Mr. Little had to say no. Does that help raise EOC scores? Yes. Can I do without it? Sure, but would it be nice? Yes. This year he bought us a cheaper program, which is great too, Actively Learn at about $3,000. Can I do without that? Sure, but are teachers spending their own money? Yes, but it is those extra things that make the classroom special and welcoming and all of those things.
Which also impacts scores too.
Yeah.
And her ability to differentiate. So to meet the unique needs of all the kids in the classroom, we can't challenge kids unless we have these types of programs. So many of the programs that we purchase and use, we're able to then challenge and progress monitor and make adjustments based on kids' success because we've got these other programs that we're using.
And one of the points of what we're doing right here is looking down the road, because if we've lost between 2,000 and 3,000 students in the last 4 years, we want to bring all those students back. And it's those things that you're doing that are going to bring the students back.
And what you're talking about, putting that money back in, is the equivalent of only one teacher and one teacher assistant in the entire district. Like, so when you think about, geez, that's a big hit, I was floored when, Ashley and I worked together and we found $1 million that we had cut costs and saved what we put out in October, if you remember. I drove home going, $1 million, we found $1 million, it's gonna be hundreds of people. It was 18. Or 20, maybe it was 20. And it was such a letdown, because for us sitting at this table, for educators, $1 million sounds like a lot of money. And you'd be amazed that that $5 doesn't go as far as you think that it does.
Yeah, I felt that way with the, we had the consultant come in, and the results of that is possibly, because it's not like it's found money, we have to do things to get it, but the net gain's gonna be about $410,000. I'm like, but it doesn't go very far.
I'll just say that I'm sure that you had a specific purpose for why you were doing that change from 65 to 60, because there is something else that is a cost that we can't as easily fundraise or ask for community donations for, so you were just making a choice for something that we currently offer students that would not impact us not being able to fully have those athletics. I do appreciate that, because that's something I might not be able to recreate myself at every individual school. So, I feel like when there are big ticket dollar items, I trust your judgment on needing those dollars somewhere to protect positions or huge expenses. You guys know we always can use more instructional supplies. For me at my school, that $5 would be about $2,000. So, right, $5 times 400 kids, 2,000, is that what we're talking about, right? So just to give you perspective of what that would be from my instructional supplies.
And we find that it's easier to give 100 people one paper cut than give one person 100 paper cuts. But this is the reality of what we have to do every day. I know schools have to ration paper. You get one ream of paper for the copier, and you have to bring your paper with you to the copier. It's like bargaining. There are backroom deals. It's like there's a black market paper thing in the building. But this is the life of an educator.
So, one of our goals is to increase student enrollment, which will increase that ADM, which will spread across the pie. And that's what we've got to do. That's our goal, right here. So,
If I could follow up, wonderful conversation. I suspected exactly what you said. You just gave me real detail. So thank you. Why would we cut $5 out of the instructional and $10 out of the pre-K instructional? It seems like it's because it's somewhat invisible, because you're right, you kind of plow it all together there. But after hearing this, that doesn't seem to be right. And then to kind of push it towards athletics. And I say this as, somebody who played 3 sports through my entire high school career, and I've had to play with, jerseys that were hand-me-downs, et cetera. So I have a great fondness for that. But it seems to me this is not the right place to do it, to try and save $5 per student or $10 per student. It's actually doing more harm to the adults who are trying to do the right thing.
Well, we're also adults trying to do the right thing too.
Yeah.
But I think and I just used that as an example, the athletics. We're also seeing an increase in any number of other things as well. That was just a real easy kind of transition. It doesn't say that 100% of this money is going to turn into this money. But what we're experiencing is costs of increases everywhere. And so when we look at the whole budget, and of course we have to bring our budget to the board still, and if the board says, hey, you'd rather not do this, you have to do that, then we'll have to find a way to find that $130,000 or whatever it was. Whether that's through cutting positions, whether that's through, it's hard because, again, when we talked before, 83% of our operating expenses are tied up in people. So if I have to take $1 million from somewhere, $830,000 of that has to be in people. Or we don't do things like buy workbooks to increase the instructional programs that we already have purchased. Or we don't get laptops when a kid breaks theirs. I'm not saying that we're cutting instructional money so we can buy more athletic equipment. We're just saying we have a safety need, and that's just one example of what we're talking about. And in this allotment formula, we tried very, very hard after last summer to not cut staff. And the only way to do that is to have to cut something. Or rely on the state or the county commissioners or the federal government to give us more.
And I'll say this, I'd much rather know that there's a good teacher next door to me than have some more construction paper in my classroom, personally.
Yeah, and Commissioner Zappel, for me as a board member, and Dr. Merrick too, you know, we did the Capitol a couple of days ago, and way down there on a number 3, which means we're never going to get to it. The number 1s we're hoping to get to, but it's going to come to you. The number 3, there it is, this innocuous thing. It's, you know, the card readers for the cafeteria doors in the schools. That sounds like nothing, but I can challenge you that I can go in a school that didn't know me at the time. I can go in the back door and no one checks me. So that's a safety concern for me. I want that back door to be Fort Knox going into the kitchen because I want the whole school's envelope to be Fort Knox. And it's less than $300,000 to do that, but I'm not going to ask. I am asking for it, but I know I'm not going to get it because we got to give this $5 per kid or this $10. You know, it's just, there's just not enough money. It's just not enough money. So again, looking long range, if we can increase our student numbers, we will increase our ADM while we do all this other stuff. You know, we really are doing, but you know, you put a finite dollar on what we can get, and we're grateful for every nickel we get. We're grateful. Y'all are generous, but we just have these needs.
And we certainly don't want to take the money out of a teacher's pocket. It's certainly not what we're trying to do. And we're certainly trying to increase things like salaries and local benefits and local supplements and things like that. But what we also have is a burden on our educators that they're doing more jobs than they were doing 5 years ago. Because I don't have enough social workers, and I don't have enough counselors, and I don't have any mental health therapists have to come through the county. We can't afford them ourselves. We have to rely on you folks for things like SROs, for safety, for all these different things. And our teachers are the ones picking up the slack. And that's hard too, and I think that's what I'm worried about is how far can I push this before everyone just burns out? Us included, principals included. Because I know that every one of them has done the job of a social worker, or a counselor, or instructional coach in the last 20 minutes. And I wish we had better answers. I don't have them.
Well, I think that there could be an earnest effort on the part of the school board and yourself to reach out to the public in a campaign, a consistent campaign, to say we need to raise your taxes, because that's ultimately where the money that you're talking about. It's not like the county commission has a big pile of money someplace that they're hoarding. It comes from the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So getting out in front of this and making the emotional appeal that you're saying, that everyone around this table is saying, that we simply don't have enough money. We need you, the taxpayer of New Hanover County, to bite the bullet and to pay more in your taxes. That would be helpful.
That's one of the reasons to make this process so transparent. You know, we've done listening sessions, we've done listening tours, we've talked to families, but it's you know, it's an uphill climb.
The way it comes out in the public is, you know, I'm sorry, we're just going to cut through a bunch of baloney here, is that the county commissioners aren't giving us enough money. And that's not the real message. So I'm just trying to,
You're right.
cut right to it. We have, you know, the same kind of pressures, and, you know, I encourage you to come to one of our budget sessions and talk about, you know, the things that, the pressures that we have on us to spend for amazing amount of things outside of schools. The same kind of pressures. But the reality is, if you need, what you do, more money, It's got to come from the taxpayer. It's the way that we're set up here in North Carolina. And I know that's going to be a bitter pill, and I know that, it's a difficult thing, those words will get stuck in your mouth, but if we could shift this narrative, that it's constantly the 5 commissioners or our wonderful staff who is just hoarding money and not giving it to it, the well-deserved, that would be incredibly helpful. And you're right, these kind of meetings help build that kind of relationship and that kind of partnership, truly. I think we would have a great success in working with the business community as well when they saw that we were all pulling on the same rope.
And that's, I think I was trying to be very specific about the needs from the state as well when we started this conversation. That-
Can't speak for the state, but I hear you.
What I mean is that, a lot of those problems, I'm not saying belong at your doorstep. But, what we do have is an inability to have a bake sale enough to get this across the line by ourselves.
And to that end, 3 or 4 of us went to Raleigh yesterday to ask for some money. We didn't get any yet, but we did make some asks, So, you're not going to hear me say that about you, that you're not giving us enough money. I'm also not very interested in going out there saying that we need to raise taxes, especially in the reevaluation year where the house prices are going up so much in terms of there. It's just not a chance.
Yes.
So here we are. We try to make do with what we have. And the whole point of this, one or the other was to come out from under the cloud we were under for the last couple of years, that we exhaust our fund balance, that we're, in arrears and all these other things. And we've proven that that's not exactly true, but we're hoping that you guys start to trust us a little bit more, and we can work together and inch our way out of this thing.
Where this will come down to, and it's coming very rapidly in the next 6 weeks,
Yes, sir.
is the discussion of pennies.
Yes.
How many pennies on the tax rate? And a number that we should all keep in mind is each penny from your county tax rate equates to $8 million. Eric?
Right.
And there's going to be a great debate. I know many of the people around this table will be pushing very hard,
Very closely watching.
yeah, on there. And let's keep in mind some of these discussions. And, and if there's a need, which is what I'm hearing here, a penny here or a penny there can make a huge difference.
Especially I'm in the city of Wilmington. My taxes have gone twice in the last 4 years, so I'm hypersensitive to it. And so Pat, when y'all are in Raleigh, is it just an ask for more money, or is it to modernize the allotment, or to fund the allotment, or change the formula? What are you asking for? Kim, thank you for the acronyms. The new one you need to add is
ADM.
the new one you need to add is bluff. Bottom line up front. What do you need? What do you need? I know what you want. What do you need?
So if you guys will, at some point in time, go to our website, you can look at our legislative priorities. Look, it's happening right now. And we have specific legislative priorities that we're trying to push and look at. And if you look down, you can see a lot of them in there together. But I'll tell you the things that I'm asking for is the allotment formula has not changed in a decade, and students have. So my first ask is to address the allotment formula concerns. The other concerns we're asking for are things like helping with our pre-K and helping with our exceptional children. Those are our big ticket items. And the argument, and I'm speaking for Philip and for Janet and for Kim, the argument about who's responsible to pay for the water to put the fire out at my house doesn't help me put the fire out at my house. We have significant needs. We have significant physical capital needs as well. I am working as hard as we can to help improve the relationship with our community, with our perception in the community, because that's where I think this argument comes from. We have to, are the best game in town, folks, for educating children. We have experience beyond anything else. Our scores reflect that, but our perception needs to change. And all I can do is share with you guys the extreme need that we have. And it's going to take collaboration. But you will never hear me say that you guys aren't helping enough or so-and-so isn't helping enough. I think the state could help a little. But I'm not going to blame you folks because I already know you're leaning in. But also, I also know that I can look you in the face and know you care about these kids. And I'm certainly not going to apologize to anybody for pushing to make sure our kids have everything they need. And I'm trying to make sure I'm showing you enough of our budget to know that I'm not throwing it around or wasting it.
So about the
I
allotment,
think you make a point that, thank you, Rob, for actually saying we need to get the message out. And I think one of the great things about this is county and schools being able to understand together what's actually going on. It's not just why you need more money. And then whether it's asking specifically for higher taxes or whatever the ask is, if the schools in the county can come together and ask as one, that will make a huge difference in our community.
Sure.
Is if we have the same message. So thank you for that.
on the allotment,
Yeah, go ahead.
are we having consistent issues across all 10 or 12 districts? 15. I mean, is Whiteville City Schools having the same issue with APs?
Yeah, these allotment formulas are across the board. I will tell you that we do have a generous allotment from our county commissioners.
Yes, we do.
I've worked in a district where our local supplement was $100 at Christmas. And I didn't have any extra anything because there's just not enough anywhere else. If you are and we're concerned about our needs. We are one of the wealthier counties in the state. There are counties that, Robeson, somebody help me please.
It's Robinson in North Carolina.
Okay,
I'm a native.
Robeson.
Robinson.
They're the lowest funded county from their local government. They have $777 a kid. They don't have $60 a kid in instructional funding. But we want to be better than that.
Yeah.
So I think some of the significant pressure points you're seeing in this, and they've talked about, well, let's go to a weighted student funding formula, which is all well and good, but then again, you have the problem that our educators are highly, highly skilled. And the average cost of an educator here is different than the state's average because our teachers have master's degrees. We have one of the highest national board ratios of all the counties in the state. So our teachers are of higher quality and value and cost. So
It costs more to live here than Robbins County.
it sure as heck does. It sure does. It's gonna cost even more when we raise taxes.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
And you do the reeval.
Exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, you open that door, I walk right through it, didn't you?
You do the reeval, and then, you cut out so many teachers from being able to live here.
But I
But we
think,
have to. I mean, I'm not complaining.
Well, actually, I taught in Robinson County and was an administrator in Whiteville City. And when I recruited people from UNCW, one of the first things I said was, you don't want to live in Wilmington. It costs a fortune to live there. You're a brand new teacher, come to Whiteville. I can help you live here and you can still make it to the beach in 45 minutes. And we would get kids who were just fresh out of college because they couldn't afford it. That was 10 years ago. And now, I don't know how, but I do know that their supplement from the county commissioners or from the city council is about $900 per student in Whiteville.
and ours starts out at 7,000. Now what we tell them to do is to live in Whiteville and drive here to work.
Yeah.
That's no joke. I actually do live in Leland a lot. I come over here.
Yeah.
Well, and that is difficult. And this is not about, and I think this is part of changing the perception. This is about changing, it is not us against you folks, it just can't be. And I know that, quite frankly, it has been before. But we are in this together. I mean, they're your kids too. We all want the same things. And I'm not asking for the moon, but I'm asking to not see that look of exhaustion in a teacher's eye every day. And how do we balance that?
Okay.
Before we leave the Raleigh visit, following up on what John was saying, what were the reactions to lottery? Did you speak, or was that one of your talking points?
I don't think we spoke about the lottery or the allotments.
The lottery, you know,
The lottery proceeds.
putting it back to where it started, at 40% going to the schools instead of capping it. That one thing alone would free up literally hundreds of millions of dollars across our state. And that's what, you know, what the voters voted on when they, across the state, was a lottery that would return 40% to the local school districts. And after a few years and fantastic amount of money coming in, the state legislature chose to cap it at $100 million or $110 million now, and the rest of it goes into the general fund. So just going back to the original formula, 40%, would be, yeah, just that one thing alone. To me, it's always stunned, and speaking with our local delegation, they go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Crickets.
Ashley, do you know how much we get in lottery funding?
We get about, it does vary from quarter to quarter, but the first 3 quarters is usually around 500,000, and then that fourth quarter is usually about 300,000.
Each time?
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably not 40%.
No, well, sorry, the numbers that I've seen on it would, hundreds of millions of more dollars would be flowing in across the state if we went back to that original intent of the lottery.
Do you know, Ashley, what the state's fund balance is?
I do.
Because the number I heard was $7 billion. We got 2.1, folks.
Now, we heard yesterday that, you know, obviously, the state is dumping a ton of money in the western part, and rightly so. But that's going to suck up, really, all the extra money in this session. But this is certainly worth the ask. I'd love to get like 5 minutes of your time to get a little bit better versed on that, and then.
Pat, I'll give you 6 minutes, anytime you want.
I think I'm going to see you next Friday, or Friday next, anyway, soon.
I
next
can't
couple
wait,
weeks.
yeah.
Thank you.
So back to your Raleigh trip, I've made a few trips, and Pat and I bumped into each other up there one time. And it was community college week, and it was realtor week. Do we have a school board week in Raleigh? Will all the school boards visit Raleigh?
We sort of made our own, but I don't know.
We're all 115
No, of course
districts.
not. No. And most of our lobbying either goes through the School Board Association, Association of School Administrators, NCSAA. So they have lobbyists as well, but that's an interesting thought I hadn't thought
Yeah,
about.
ask them if you could coordinate, pick a week. We're in the long session now that you've done this a lot.
Man,
pick
I've
a
been in
week.
this job a week, man.
Huh?
Hold on. I ain't been here a week yet.
Yeah. But pick a
It was
week.
this week, wasn't it?
At some point, when you know there are all the legislators will be there, and it was amazing to us, because I was there community college week, and, you know, I saw our guy, Morton, and then I saw groups bringing students with them in their school shirts, talking about, it's a powerful thing to be
Yeah,
able
it
to.
is.
It would be also powerful to have 115 superintendents at the
Yeah,
table, too.
and work
Fun to
with-
have.
And then the
Yeah.
speaker, and
With this.
you get the speaker and the Senate Pro Tem to give you an audience. It's
We will ask.
big. I mean, it's better than being Valley Governor. But we'll go. That's, I think that you need to,
You know, that's one of the other things that we talked about yesterday among ourselves is if we have similar needs to Pender and Brunswick, we have a lot more buying power with 3 counties. Because one of the things we heard is that's not an easy sell because New Hanover County is so wealthy. You hear that a lot. You know, we're the wealthy county. And there's so many other counties that aren't doing nearly as well as we are. So we can't get that ask because, you know, it has to be something that's, you know what I'm saying? So,
well, that's why I asked the question. Is the problem consistent across all 15
yeah, it has to be.
And if all 115 districts pick a week, just push it forward.
For the delegate. Okay, great ideas. Where are we going from here, Ashley?
So I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. So we'll have maybe a little bit of time at the end, and I'm hoping we can get through the agenda. And we can always circle back at our next meeting as well. So as I had spoke to before, we are still in the middle of our own budget work sessions. We had a work session earlier this week, and our next one is going to be March the 19th. But I wanted to let this group know the things that are being discussed or being proposed to the board. Once again, this could all change, but these are the proposals that are coming forth. We are developing our budget with a 3% increase in salaries, and that's based on the last 5 years historical data. That's how we're forecasting that out, along with a retirement increase from 24.04% to 25.4%, and a health insurance rate increase from $8,095 to $8,500. And so that's how we're starting the initial budget. We are making some assumptions related to state revenue. We are assuming that the state, if they do implement a 3% raise and these benefit adjustments, that they would fund those. And so we'll just make that assumption while we are building the budget. And then also with federal, I know there's been a lot of conversation about federal and what would happen to school federal funding. Since we don't really have any information as far as what funding would possibly be pulled back, we're just going to move forward that we're going to receive the same level of federal funding that we received this year. Of course, when we're looking at state and federal, we are taking into account our average daily membership adjustments. So as you might recall, the state changed their funding model last year, well actually for this year, funding in arrears. So, you know, most of our state funding comes from our average daily membership. And so our second month enrollment was a little bit less this year than it was the year before. So this year, and I'm just talking K-12 enrollment when I'm talking about the state funding. This year, second month came in at $24,599, and this year's funding was based on ADM of $24,858. So that's a reduction of about 259 students. So we are anticipating that reduction in revenue from the state. So those are the things that were our starting point for building those budgets going into next year. And so when we're looking at our local revenue, and this is where we spend a lot of our time because this funding, as we've talked about before, is more flexible than our other pots of money. We do know, and I believe we talked about this last time, the city of Wilmington is ending the Safe Light program, which will impact our funding, fines and forfeitures by about $1.4 million. And we were looking at the last 3 years, and we just did an average of what that revenue that was actually received over the last 3 years. So we're taking that into account as we build the local budget. But we do have some good news as well. So we did finally receive a check from FEMA to reimburse us related to Hurricane Florence for $467,000. And so we did not budget that this year. We're going to hold that money and use that to help for our budget next year. And so we'll include that in revenue as we're building the budget. And then oh, just side note, we are waiting for one more check, we think, from FEMA, and so we're hoping before the end of the year we'll get that one more check.
Ashley, could you repeat the years that we got that money from? Because I don't think Commissioner Dowell called it. I know. We just got 2018 money from FEMA.
Yeah.
Eric, when was the last payment that we received at the county from FEMA?
We're still waiting for our final payment as well.
Thank you. So
It's all over.
We join you in the pain here. Believe me, we know a lot about FEMA and their payment.
See, that's what scares us about the low fund balance, even though y'all have made a great MOU with us, but that's what scares us is, you know, how long it would take.
You did get your money from ECIS though, right? We're doing a little front park here.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be a good
We've
question.
got a small amount due on that one as well.
Oh, we're still behind on that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other good news we have, possibly if our board agrees to this, is NCDOT has offered to purchase about 13.447 acres of land at $1.7 million. It's acreage behind the Johnson Pre-K, and that's related to the railroad, expanding the railroad corral. So hopefully, we'll negotiate that and that'll come through and we'll be able to use that funding as well for revenue for next year. This year, we're also budgeting some Medicaid reimbursement. We haven't been budgeting Medicaid reimbursement into our budget. We've waited to actually receive it because that reimbursement has been delayed 3 years. And so it was so slow coming in, we didn't feel comfortable budgeting that, building that into our budget. But last spring, there was a change where we no longer have to go through DPI to get that reimbursement. And so that's been really good. Since that change has happened, they've caught back up at the end last spring and at the early part of this fiscal year, they've caught back up. And it appears like now we're going to be on track. So we are building into next year's budget $500,000 as Medicaid reimbursement that we're going to be able to use, and we feel confident with that number. We feel like that's a good estimate. And then we are going to ask for a 3% increase from the county going into next year to help pay for some things that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. That 3% increase is for our the county appropriation for the operating budget, but also we're asking for a 3% increase for the pre-K grants. And then in addition to that 3% increase for the pre-K grants, we're going to ask for some flexibility in where we put those classrooms for those county pre-K classrooms. And the reason is, and I know I don't have a lot of time, but when we lost Head Start, Head Start allowed us to provide services to 3- and 4-year-olds. When we lost that grant, we lost some flexibility of providing services to 3-year-olds because while we still have NC Pre-K, we can only provide service to 4-year-olds. And so the only funding that we have now where we can provide service to 3-year-olds are the county grants and the endowment, 2 classes through the endowment. And so what we've run into this year is that we may have a 4-year-old and we need to provide service to that 4-year-old, which means we need to use NC Pre-K money. And that 4-year-old may have a sibling, but I can't. And so the 4-year-old's at Johnson and the 3-year-old is at a different location, and it's been a hardship for the families. And so I don't know that that happens an awful lot, but it has happened enough where it's been a reoccurring theme that's come to my office. So I would like to be able to address that and perhaps move a classroom to Johnson for 3-year-olds, just so if we do have siblings, that's an option. So that's one of the just a flexibility thing that we'll ask for from the county. And then the other things, we've talked about raises and benefits, and of course we've got some increases for utilities and insurance. And of course, whenever we have an increase from the county, the charter schools get an increase as well, so they'll get their portion as required by law. And we have also feel like in this budget cycle, we need to build in additional funding for EC contracted services. We're having a really hard time staffing EC positions. There's so much turnover and the kids still need those services. And so if we're not able to have someone on staff that can provide therapy or these special type services, then we need to be able to contract for those things so that the children are still being served. And this year, we actually used that back pay, I'm calling it back pay, I don't know if that's the right word, but where the Medicaid was behind on the reimbursement, this year we used that money to provide those additional contracted services for EC. but that's, of course, one-time money. So we're trying to build this into our operating budget so we can help support the EC program. And then also, we're going to be using some money to support the pre-K program as well. We have been using Title I this year. It was about $1.2 million to support that program, and we use carryover from Title I, and we're just not going to have that carryover next year. So we're also incorporating those expenses into this budget. And then the last area I wanted to talk about are our budget priorities that came out of the superintendent budget listening tour, if we want to call it that. And so that's where the remaining increases that we're asking for from the county are going to support. So Chris, I don't know if you want to talk through those budget priorities or if you want me to talk through those.
We don't have it back here.
It is actually, I
In a-
don't know.
I think you do, because I have it.
I don't,
It's
it
at
was.
the back of the link, we can find it at the link.
It was emailed,
Yeah, it's actually in the agenda. It's just, we didn't do a separate document. It's just in that.
Well, I got it. It's in the agenda. You're special. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I feel like I've talked enough, but what we are proposing is an increase in our local funding allotment to accommodate for two specific budget priorities that I feel like have been sort of gained through listening to the staff and the stakeholders. One is a concern about safety, and the other is to address individual academic and behavioral needs of students. Both of these, quite frankly, are state unfunded mandates that we are trying to address. But honestly, the safety initiative, which is the less expensive of the two, has two arms to it. One is to address some physical safety needs at our traditional high schools. And the other is to embed a program called Safe and Civil Schools in all of our buildings to help students and younger students learn how to regulate their behavior so that they never get to a place where they are throwing chairs. Or what we used to say is that a kid who is in crisis is either run out of or never learned, affecting coping mechanisms for what he's experiencing. So helping kids learn those, and helping adults learn how to not trigger children when they're having an issue or concern. Has anybody seen The Breakfast Club?
Oh, yeah.
Remember, you mess with the bull, you get the horns bender, okay? What you saw was a perfect example of an adult increasing the stress level on a child. So of course, we don't hire that guy here, not gonna be hired here. But my point being that is one of our specific needs, is to help kids learn better skills and help teachers be more effective and create some safety and physical protections for students at high school. And then the other one is a larger ask that's going to put a position back in every school that is going to focus on specific pressure point areas, either academic remediation, academic extension, graduation rate, or behavior. And I plan on taking that data to the state to show them what happens when they do fund something. This is the results that we get from it. Ta-da.
And I want to backtrack on what you said just a minute ago, because Mr. Zappa, you might find this interesting. I took this with me yesterday. I learned earlier this week, and you might not think about it. I tell people that school isn't like it was when we were in school. The students are not the same as what we were in school. And we have 15 students who require a one-to-one RN every single time they're in our schools. We have 4 who require CNAs every time they're in class, and those don't come cheap. And sometimes we have to do contracted services. She was talking about EC contracted services. They don't come cheap. It's not like we have those people on staff. There's significant more behavior support going on now than ever before, and it's increasing exponentially, maybe in quarterly sections throughout the year, half-year sections, because our population coming in has significantly bigger needs. That's why if we go back to pre-K, one of your favorite things, if we can solve some things there, get it going faster, then maybe it won't be so expensive on what we're doing now, but we're stuck in it right now. And it's just, I've gotten some more on that, and I'll be sharing it as I get it. But, because it's just a vastly different landscape than it was, and people don't realize that. Thank you.
Yes. So I wanted to share information, and thank you, Eric, for providing. It's just a handout. We won't have time to go through this today, but I just wanted to share information. The county has had their first work session. I believe that was in January. Was that the 30th, I think?
That's right.
So that information is just out there for informational purposes. We weren't going to go through that today. I did also want to put a plug in for the QR code, just if you're interested, in addition to the legislative priorities, there's also a write-up of our current initiatives. And I thought that if you're interested, we would love to bring any of these topics back to the group if it's something you'd like to learn more about. So if you scroll down, you'll see some different initiatives that we have going on, advanced teaching roles, and if you keep scrolling, you'll see some different things. So I just wanted to point that out, because if this is something that you would like to know more about, we'd love to be able to bring groups in to be able to do a presentation for you guys. And then the next thing on the agenda is I just wanted to share with the group where we are in our budget timeline and our process. So as I said, we're going to have our next board budget work session on March 19th, and we'll finish up talking through some of the same things that I went through here today. We'll finish those conversations. We're also going to try to finish up capital. Might have, over the next 2 meetings, finish up capital. But we are on track. We still plan on March 25th to submit the superintendent's proposed budget at agenda review on that March 25th date. So it won't be a vote for our board. We will just be sharing the information on that day. And then on April 1st is when we would carry the proposed budget to our board for a vote to see if they approve for us to move forward with that budget plan, and also it would include the request to the county in that approval. And then April 15th, we would actually submit that request to the county manager, the county commissioners that ask for next year. So we're on track to be able to do that. And then as of now, March the 27th is the next time we have this committee meeting. And I want to make sure everybody's got that on their calendar. And if not, if we need to look at a different date, I know we planned these way out in advance, but it would still be at 12:30 the same time.
Yeah, so that's the 27th.
Yes,
What time is the
at 12:30.
the 19th?
March the 27th.
Or the
Oh,
March
I'm sorry.
19th budget
Yeah.
work session?
Yes.
What time is that?
Yep. Hold on a second. Let's look at that date. It's at from 1 to 3. Can you move that one up a little bit?
Thank you. And I just does everyone have this? Or just me?
No, everybody has that.
So this is what the county brought us, and it's fascinating. I've got some questions, but it's definitely worth flipping through. It's online as well, but you guys brought us some really fascinating county information, very helpful in what we're doing, I think. So pull that out of your package and study it. So is the 27th good with everyone? You see any giant roadblocks?
Madam Chair, if I could just kind of emphasize or highlight one point in here. I know that, I wouldn't say it was a shock, but it was certainly illuminating to us, the county commission. 40% of our budget in the county is going towards education. So $40 out of every $100 of your tax money is going to education. We put a lot of emphasis on that. There's no other larger budget item in our budget. So just wanted to point that out.
And it's interesting to read, the difference between what New Hanover County Schools get and the community college, and the flat line on their increases. I did take that, I did take it with heart. There's great information here. It really is. Thank you. So, anything else? about 6 or 7 minutes.
I have a follow-up for Ashley. I just wanted to make sure, I know there's always this, the county funds separate from the state, approximately 600 positions, including teachers are in there. When you say a 3% raise, is there any of that money coming from the state? Or are you including all personnel in there? I'm wondering if we are going to get a bill essentially, because that 3% will affect all the teachers that the county's paying for as well.
So I don't know if this is answering your question, but I'm going to give it a shot. So the 3% increase we're asking for from the county, that's just kind of a separate thing, a 3% ask from the county. When we're looking at the 3% raise, and we're building that budget, it's only our local employees that we're building that budget for. We're assuming that if the state gives a raise, they're going to give us the revenue for that raise.
Yeah.
So I am keeping, as I build the budget, I am keeping those two things separate. Does that make sense? Is that answering the question?
I'm going to look to the person who's going to advise me on this.
Okay.
Eric, Amanda, you know where I'm headed at. I know I've pulled on that thread a number of times about not wanting, and this has happened in the past, of getting, the message that somehow the state has given a raise, and now we, as a county, to keep all the teachers being paid the same, we have to increase the amount of money that we're putting in. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense with what Ashley is saying, or are there any surprises in there for you?
I don't believe so. I understand what you're saying.
Good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for the question.
And then Raleigh, that's, the leadership is saying they're looking at 3%.
Thanks, John, yeah.
That's the chatter. We'll see what it makes paper, and then when the gavel is, we'll find out.
Well, thanks for sharing that, because I haven't heard that yet. That was my estimate. I'm kind of excited I was so close.
It's a little exciting.
In that one page that I had that you didn't have, I now have copies if you want, and I know John and Chris and Natalie will want them, and maybe Mr. Zappel. But we do have them if you want them, so you don't have to go to the website. Yes?
Since we're on this, there's one area that I don't understand on this. Could you maybe enlighten me? I don't know what this chart is for public engagement expenses budget comparison.
Yeah. So county, it's at the very end. County.
Sorry, it's the next to last page.
Slide 29.
Slide 29.
I had questions.
I didn't know what it was either.
Yes, so the county just brought and is utilizing some new technology. It's called Balancing Act from Polco. What it does is it allows the resident, anyone with the link, to go in and rebalance the budget. You have access to the revenues, you have access to the expenditures. You can raise the tax rate, spend more money on the expenditure side. You can lower the tax rate and have to go through the act of which of our functions are you going to reduce, and you have to submit a balanced budget. It will not let you. I put this in as just an information for our commissioners of this is what we see when we've had only 10 people look at the technology and use the technology. We did a very soft launch on the technology. We really just wanted to get it out there with the already adopted budget, knowing that it wasn't going to change, but let people get used to it. We also held sessions called Brewing Budgets, where we went out into the community. The Senior Resource Center had coffee and just talked through budgets and sort of worked through this technology with them. This was in no mean we're going to increase, decrease anything, just to show when people are using this technology, this is what we can then see on the back end to give a little bit more perspective of we have our preferences and our passions. What is the community now saying on where they would like to see their funds go? We're going to launch it a little bit harder in the coming months. We'll redo some brewing budget sessions, go back out to the community, and we invite people to be happy to come and be in schools as well, wherever we can really just
Fun to do.
let people try their hand and see what it's like, because it really does sort of take this practice into a data-centered world where you can balance the budget, and then we can see, so on this left side one, it's just the average submission increase and decrease, and again, it was 10 people out of a 250,000 person county. 10 people increased and decreased, and that is where it fell. On the right one, I left all of the buttons clicked, so you can not only see the average increase, decrease, but you can also see sort of the modes clicked, how many times someone clicked to increase a revenue or decrease. So that's what it is. It is very much informational at this point, and we'll keep pushing it out to keep sort of seeing priorities and where they land, but yeah, don't let this scare you that.
It's an interesting thing to play with.
Yeah, that'd be-
I was one of the 10, and you see all that education, and that was probably me. But it was kind of like the financial literacy we give to the kids, you know, that training. And, you know, where it says, you know, go over here and buy all your hair, you know, your hair salon stuff, and now you don't have any money to feed your kids. And the kids are saying, well, can I give a kid up for adoption because I got to have all this stuff for my hair care? You know, it was kind of like that. So I think for an adult, it was a fun exercise. I had no idea there'd only be 10 people doing it.
We've had much more.
Did you
success.
selectively target us?
Yeah, we looking for like, we want more people downtown without jobs hanging around. Or, you know.
So we actually, I do see a geolocator when people fill this out, so I can see what parts of the county are filling it out. So we can make sure that we're really getting all the way down to the beaches and all the way up Ogden, Burbank area. The other part of this I will just tell you about is there is a taxpayer receipt option with it, where you can go in and put in your estimated value of your home, and it prints out like a CVS style receipt on what your dollars go to across the county. So what does it go to for the finance office, strategy office, health and human services, everything like that. That's awesome. So the two link to each other to play off of each other.
What would be fun is if we said, you know, we talked about raising the penny, what's that going to do to my my property taxes? How much more am I going to pay every year? And where would I want that to go if I did?
Amanda, can you set us up with a little thing like that next time, and we'll all get on and do it together? Wouldn't that be fun?
Just send us a link.
I'll figure it out.
Kind of like watching the teenagers do it, though. You know, if you want to ride along on one of those, we do the financial literacy things a number of times, and it's fascinating. You know, because you know they make the announcement, and there's all these different stations, and you know just half the bleachers rush towards the getting their hair care products and stuff. You know, and then the nerdy kids are over here, and watching them work through the day to get their get it balanced. But seriously, I've heard children say, well, can I give a child up? Because it's one of the options. Give a kid up for adoption, and it'll save this much on your budget. And, I've got to ditch my husband, or it's hilariously fun. But we are
That's not
definitely
just for
trying
money, though. There's other reasons for that.
It's hilariously fun.
I do need to make you guys aware,
You can't go home, is what he's about to tell you.
we are currently in a secure status. There's police activity in the area, so the doors are locked.
You're stuck with us.
Yeah, we might as well keep talking, because you're not going anywhere. It'll just be a few more minutes, I'm sure.
Can I just ask a curiosity question? If you have that kind of bill, not really related to this, but just as a Hanover County resident. So on page 13, slide 13, where it talks about how we have this, 60th lowest county taxes, but yet I feel like we're a pretty wealthy county. Is that sort of like if you have a lot of businesses and you're bringing in a lot of sales tax, then maybe you save more here? I was just curious, how is it that we're 16th lowest? Is that good to be lowest? Bad to be lowest? I totally don't understand. I'm just always grateful for all the privileges of living in New Hanover County and the resources we have, but I was just curious. Tell me a little bit more about page 13.
Sure, so there's some trade-off in property values. So the higher the property values are, to raise the same amount of money, the tax rate can be lower, so there's some sort of, a county that's got lower property values, the tax rate's got to be higher to raise the same amount of money as a county that's got higher property tax values, which is just the multiplication of the two numbers together. So that's one of the things that drives it. Sales tax certainly plays a part. The services that are offered by the various counties can play a part. But I'd say the biggest thing is the property value.
Eric, to follow up on that, I know some municipalities are in the utility business, are counties also?
They're not in the utility business.
Are there any counties on this list that also offer utilities?
I don't know the answer to that.
So, like, some municipalities have water, and so they can lower your tax rate if they're collecting revenue on the utilities. So
And you hide it in the utilities, what I'm saying.
You know, we're in an assessment year, right? Every 4 years, we redo our assessments. And are there, I see like low, medium, high questions about what might happen. I'm sure that your costs are going up the very same way our costs are going up. How will the change in assessments likely offset, you know, your basic inflation? You know, what, is it going to be a boom or a bust?
Well, I think, for one thing, we're all glad we live in New Hanover County. And because we make strategic choices on what we choose to put into our county, our schools, our county supplemental funding for the schools, the fact that we have a sheriff's department. Remember, by state mandate, we're only required to have a sheriff and a deputy. That's it. But we think that our constituents, deserve and want more, and that's why we have a sheriff's department, approximately 400 plus. Yeah, 400 deputies. So we got to, keep all of that in mind as well. Sorry, you keep going. You had another. I can see you had another piece.
So we're going to have a new assessment.
Yes.
And you're going to bring in a bunch of new money that I'm sure offsets some of the increased costs that you have.
Sorry, 21% is the number we use as far as the inflation factor from 2021 to now. So we're providing you, the county is, the same services that we essentially set the rate at in 2021, yet we've seen 21% increase in our costs between there and now. Oh, I'm getting the evil eye from Amanda. Sorry, am I wildly off there?
No, you're not. We set the rate, but then we also set it twice.
Thank you, Amanda. My God, you're helping me and myself. Yeah, we've also cut the rate in the past 4 years twice. So we're actually bringing in less money than we were in 2021.
That's slide 12.
Yeah. And yet still providing you the same level of service, and on top of which we're seeing more people move in, over that time. So that's the point of reevaluation, is that every 4 years, and we're allowed to go every 8 years by state mandate. We choose to go 4, so there's not such a sticker shock, that happens here. We try and, reset essentially, and that's what we're seeing. The numbers that were, when this came out, were still in play. They're now set. You will receive your reassessment in the mail
Momentarily.
tomorrow.
And you can already see it online.
Yeah, you can see it online, but I think they go out February 28th, which is tomorrow. And we're seeing on average about 65% increase in property values. Some of those in the beaches
Beach towns are
were
higher.
higher, some elsewhere were lower, but across the board. That does not mean your taxes go up by 65%. Because remember, you're taxed on a penny or dollar for every $100 value. But that's the tools that Amanda was referring to are really helpful. You go on the county website and go to which department? Finance?
Finance.
Yep.
And then there is a section for the FY25-26 budget, and it has the links to all of our tools.
So the question is the county's income
Yes.
from that increased assessment, right? How much? Or do we know yet?
Tim, we were all having a good day here. We were racing to the barn. And then
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Barnes locked us in.
I didn't even
And-
bring muffins, I apologize.
Well, but, I mean, it begs the question,
Yeah.
if you provide us 40% of your overall budget, right?
Yeah.
40% of what you take in comes to schools.
That includes the community college, as well
Okay.
as public schools and the charter schools.
Well, so would it be safe to assume that whatever the county income goes up, that we would see 40% of that increase as well?
Yeah, nice try.
It was a good try.
Lisa, look, I like the way you came forward on that, almost out of your chair, I believe.
I mean,
Yeah, no, it's a legitimate.
Please understand,
Yeah.
I'm new at this and I don't understand. Are you looking to make sure that with this tax increase, that if I'm a homeowner here, that I would not increase my property tax? So you're going to reduce taxes by the extent that the property value increased?
We're going to reduce the tax rate.
To make sure that no homeowner pays more?
That would be called revenue neutral.
Yes.
But revenue neutral is a fungible term because of what I was just saying to Tim here about the inflation. We have to make up from where, the 21%, increase in dollars. in real
Trust me, we
dollars.
feel that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, which equates to about $68 million is what am I right?
So if you reduce the tax rate
Yes.
to keep people at the same rate, and
Yes.
you went up 67% in value,
Mhm.
we're already the 16th lowest out of 100.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea where that would put us?
No, because it would depend on other.
What everybody else did too.
But they come in at different years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So
they do.
Some maybe this
Yeah.
year.
For the next 2 years, probably the federal will also be
I mean, I guess, is there a number you're trying to hit on the greatest hits here? I mean, are you trying to get in the lowest 10 of tax bracket, or
I think we're trying to maintain the highest quality of life we can, and
keep
using
people from rioting.
the
Well,
tax dollars.
while maintaining the highest educational opportunities
Yes.
too, right? So where's that balance point?
Part of what we are.
Yeah, I get you.
Eric or Lisa or Amanda, could you remind me again that if we went to pure revenue neutral, what would that number be in our tax rate?
I don't know if that's been calculated based on the final number that Allison put out yesterday. So we don't have that one. I think you had it with some of these assumptions, but,
If you assume that we were going to replace the $68 million that we needed to run the county for the inflation, the tax rate would go from, we made some assumptions in the last budget, so in slide 14, if you want to look at it, we've got a revenue neutral rate, and the low end of, with the $68 million, 38 cents. We go from 45 cents to 38 cents, to create $68 million more additional revenue, to sort of reset our revenue to correspond to the expense increase that we've all felt over the last 4 years.
Right. So remember I was saying that we're going to be talking about pennies soon? So that, 38 cents, per $100 value, yeah, Pat.
Well, I wrote it.
38 cents would put you tied with 7, if no one else moved.
Chris, Mr. Superintendent.
I've been
it's
called
really-
worse.
By the way, I love the Bucktown, that's totally cool.
I knew I was going to see Hannah today. I have a Porter's Neck sweatshirt over here too.
I really warn you to don't fall in the trap of the, 1 through 10. There's so many other factors that go into, the size, the property values, the amount of sales tax. I mean, we are truly blessed here in New Hanover County to have really strong sales tax revenues, which have fallen off, but have now, through I don't know what, luck or whatever, we are now kind of going to our budget projections, but it looked like for a while, several months ago, that we are going to be in the hole several millions of dollars. Just use it as one metric. So it's really easy to kind of look at that and go, how do we get to, number one or the lowest or whatever your metric is. I've fallen into the same trap myself over the years, and I've been schooled and beat up and, pulled aside and said, don't do that, Rob. So I'm just passing on the advice that I have received. Don't allow yourself to get into that. We have I think, a really low tax rate for the services that we provide. And that includes our school system, our public school system that provides opportunity for every student in our county.
So I just have a technical question. You had said earlier, Commissioner Zappel, that the tax rate, if we looked at 1 penny, it was worth $8 million, but on here it says 1 penny currently is $5.16 million.
Prior to reevaluation. I was
This is-
using the post.
Oh, this is a
evaluation.
post reeval.
Yeah, and that was an approximate, and Eric,
Okay.
can you, is
I
there,
think the property tax base is going to go from roughly 50 billion to 80 billion. So when you do the math, 50 billion is the value. 1 penny is 5 cents, and 80 billion is about 8 cents.
Well, we're also asking you to talk about something that you're not prepared to talk about today, so let's go ahead and shift the conversation back. I don't want to beat you guys up.
this is so great that
Well,
you're asking this kind of
I did
granular
want to
stuff,
ask one,
Chris.
one interesting thing. There's a chart that talks about that, and I've lost it now, I had it, but 2017, it was just way up there. What happened in 2017?
We gave we increased taxes by 5 cents.
Yeah.
So that your teachers would all be at
That's when it was,
for one
yeah.
shining moment in history, the highest paid teachers in New Hanover, North Carolina, which we all knew, or at least some of us knew, that was totally illusory, that it would not last. Indeed, it did not.
No,
Way
it's-
quickly
and
came
it
in.
was significant, because I still get dirty looks at every superintendent meeting, because we steal people from all over.
Yeah.
And please know that these questions are not because we don't think you are supporting us enough, okay? I want to make sure that message is clear, because we spoke about that earlier. This is a challenge for all of us, and I'm not certainly saying that you guys should be digging in more. I just know that I can guarantee you care about the kids the way you do, which puts you guys in the same hot seat we're in.
Right?
I'm checking to see whether you guys can take a run for it or not.
Eric, 2018 was a resolve, right? So when you see.
Oh, that's what brought it out of it.
17, 18, that's what it reflects, the resolve.
That was, whew. I mean, I barely survived 2017 in business, but I didn't realize that it was that bunch of a hike there.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
Didn't need to be, by the way, but that's, now you're drifting into my world, and so.
Okay, we
it's
won't get into that.
okay. That's in the rearview mirror, and we are here today. But I really enjoy the fact that I've got, the top team here to kind of back me up. This is a wonderful conversation. I can't thank you enough. Please, anybody who has a question about any of the material you see in here, and we have our next budget meeting is the 6th, is that right, Lisa? Yeah. All open to the public, and I believe is FaceTimed, Facebook what?
March 7th?
YouTube, oh, it's on YouTube, yeah, great. So you can tune it in and watch it. Is it YouTube Live, or? It is live, okay. So real time.
Now we have to do
All right, if you guys want to go ahead and pack your stuff up, I think you guys can start closing. I'm going to check on your status. All right, you guys can make a run for it.
I'd like to share real quick, I circled the
Activity in here.
I'm sorry, guys, I dismissed you early. I'm sorry.
Yes, he doesn't have that authority.
Oh, I know, right? Sit down, Barnes.
I serve on the non-county, we're gonna find out. Funding committee, advising commissioners on non-profit funding.
Yeah.
There's a lot about our school groups.
Yep.
There's 77 applications.
That's right.
Totaling 3.1 million in asks. And we've been given instructions by the commission to level funding at 1.6. So that may impact some of your after-school providers.
John, you're absolutely right. Struggling, or I know I'm struggling with that right now, because there's a push within our community, we could all use your help, that people look at this and think, oh, these are just, silly groups that just, want a handout. They provide services that help the school system. Carousel Center, those of you who are familiar with their work, are, I believe, services that the county should be providing our community. We have nonprofits out there that are doing it better and cheaper than we ever could as a county, and I think are essential services that are all wrapped up in this kind of bureaucratic term of outside agency and non-county funding. And I would appreciate, if you have any questions, you can always call me, but there's also a list in the applications of all 77 that have applied are available at the county. And if you have questions about any individual group, I can tell you the ones that will float up and that will get funded, they won't get funded at what they deserve. I'll tell you that right now, because we always have downward pressure on it. And I really challenge you to find somebody, when you look into what they do, that you think is unnecessary. They all feed to the fabric that we all talk about. And yeah, a bunch of them deal with after-school projects, or, early childhood care, et cetera.
And I'm new on the committee, and I know last year,
That's right, yeah.
nobody got arts funding. And we have North Carolina Symphony,
Yep.
Wilmington Symphony.
That's right.
And Wilmington Opera. And on the application, it says how much they're asked, and the estimated number of citizens served. And so that ratio is kind of what I'm looking at, and we don't want to see the impact. Because there's organizations that have $1,000 and they're going to impact hundreds of people. Well, then the North Carolina Symphony is asking for $5,600, and their program for the schools impacts 5,000 students. So it's almost $1 per dollar. So it's a fascinating process. We had a lengthy conversation the last 2 days this week. Right? Was it this week? We were there like 3 hours with it. My book is that big.
Yeah, oh yeah, I got it.
But yeah, so just be paying attention to that.
Yeah. John, thank you, and thank you for stepping up and getting on that committee as well.
And the committee's made up of people from different sectors. So there's an arts person, there's a healthcare person, there's a faith-based person, I'm in the business sector, and then there's, we're supposed to have like judicial, I think we have a pending application.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, thanks.
So if no one has anything else, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.